one about cover letter. Well, I was asked to do a presentation on cover letter and resume. So primarily, this is going to be covering tips and strategies on how to formulate your cover and resume for industry positions, right? So we'll start with cover letters and then we'll move on. So I've handed out, you have 3 documents with you. So for this presentation, we'll be referring to starting your cover letter and the cover letter formatting document, okay? So throughout the presentation, I'll be referring to those 2. Okay, so first and foremost, what is the purpose of a cover letter, right? So in order to write an effective one, it's very important to understand why they're needed, right? A lot of people think it's just an opportunity for me to just summarize what I put on my resume, right? But if you look at it from that point of view, then you miss a really great opportunity to introduce yourself to the employer. So you have to think about something. When you're applying for a job, the person who gets your application, they have no idea who you are, right? No idea. This is their first introduction into who you are as a candidate. So you have 2 documents to introduce yourself to them, your cover letter and your resume. So you want to think about your cover letter not so much as a summary of what's on your resume, but as an opportunity to go in depth to what's on your resume. Because in your resume, it has to be very concise, right? It can't be longer than 2 pages. So you can only put so much detail in bullet points. On your cover letter is where you can take some of those examples that you've put on your resume and you can go into much more detail in terms of, you know, the strategy you used, the methodologies you used, the technical tools you used, who you collaborated with, and what the final results were, right? So you want to think, I always say your cover letter is prime real estate because you have 1 page, a completely blank page, where you can write in paragraphs about details. So the idea is to use that as a way to go into depth that you won't be able to, the same depth you won't be able to in your resume, right? So it's not a repetition of what's already on your resume. So some common misconceptions about a cover letter. So the idea that I'm just gonna have 1 cover letter, very generic, you know, says that I'm excited to apply for this job. This is where I found the job. Here's just a list of my skills. I'm collaborative, I'm a multitasker, I'm an effective researcher, I can do quantitative and qualitative research. Here are the areas of my specialty. I look forward to getting an interview from you, and I just have to change the company title, and then I'm good to go. That is not what you want to do, right? That is not what's gonna get you through the pile. The second thing is a listing of skills. The worst thing you can do for yourself is just list skills, right? A lot of people fall into that trap. Well, I'm just gonna see what skills are on the postings that people tend to come up, right? Collaborative, agile, creative, innovative, out-of-the-box thinker, effective communication skills, effective writing skills, proficient in X, Y, and Z research, and then I'm just gonna list them, right? But the reality is, anyone can go on the internet, anyone can do a Google search on the top skills that are coming up for certain fields, and then anyone can copy and paste them onto their cover letter, right? So you have to think, if I'm going to list that I have certain skills, I need to be able to prove in the examples on my cover letter how I've applied and leveraged those skills. Or else, you're just copy and pasting skills like anybody else, which isn't very difficult to do, right? The third misconception, the third myth, is that not everyone reads a cover letter, so it's not important, right? The reality is, if a posting has asked for a cover letter, they've asked for it for a reason and they will read it. So when I was a recruiter, when I put out my applications, there was positions that I asked for cover letters and there's positions that I only asked for resume. you have to understand that if an application asks for something, resume, cover letter, sometimes they ask for my job application here, I have to submit a 1,000-page report, right? If you don't submit all the documents, you will automatically be disqualified. So I had a candidate recently, we were hiring at the Career Center at Ryerson, and he wanted to apply for a position. So he submitted, so the application required resume, cover letter, and a 1,000-page report. And the report, it had details of how we were to complete this report. So he submitted his resume and cover letter, but he didn't submit the report. So regardless of how much great experience he had, relevant experience he had, his application was automatically disqualified. They wouldn't even look at his resume because he didn't submit all the documents, right? So that even applies to a cover letter. A cover letter, if it's requested, if it's part of the application, you need to submit all your documents or you can be automatically disqualified from the selection process. Some key formatting elements. So your cover letter cannot be longer than 1 page, okay? Also, you want to have the same font and size. Presentation is key. You always, so if you refer to this right here, cover letter formatting, the handout I provided, okay? You want all your information at the top. Same thing how you would do on your resume, right? You'd put in the header your name, your address, your telephone number, your email address. You want to do the same thing on your cover letter. Why? Because sometimes when an application comes through, documents get separated, right? So you want to make sure. I want to say something. If some people choose not to put their address on their resume for reasons that they're worried that if they live too far and they're applying for a job that's too far, that the employer might not consider them. That's absolutely okay. If you don't want to put your address, you don't have to. So if you're not going to put your address on your resume, then you shouldn't put it on your cover letter. But what you do need to do is you need to provide the city. So if you're not going to put your full mailing address, you at least need to put Toronto, Ontario. So the employer knows like what city you're from, okay? And then obviously today's date. And then the second section, as you can see, is when you put the position title that you're applying for. Sometimes job companies will not only have a position title, but they'll also have a number associated to the job posting. If there is a number, then you would put the number as well as the position title, then the company, the address, and so forth. I get asked a lot, how do you start it, right? What if I don't know the name of the hiring manager? So a lot of people say that if you know the name of the hiring manager, for you to address the cover letter to that person, which is great. If you know them, that's great. But the reality is, sometimes, especially when you're applying in large institutions or when you don't have a referral or you don't know someone in there, you don't know the person's name. In that case, you can just put Dear Hiring Manager. A lot of people stress themselves out and put a lot of effort and waste a lot of time to figure out the hiring manager's name. If you can, great. If you can't, I'd rather you put your effort into writing a really amazing cover letter than to spend all your time looking for the person's name, okay? Okay, so now we're gonna break down the cover letter by sections. So when I talk about the first section, the first paragraph, I'm talking about the introduction of your cover letter. That is your first paragraph. So if you refer to this second document that says starting your cover letter, okay? So these are 3 ways in which you can start your cover letter in terms of starting your introduction, okay? You can also use all 3 of these methods, right? You don't just have to pick one. You can like use 2 of them if it makes sense for you. So the idea is that in the first paragraph, you want to demonstrate some excitement, right? And connect the company's values to your own values, or the institution's values to your own values, right? When you start by demonstrating a cover letter by demonstrating excitement, by mentioning a company's mission statement or their values and how that value aligns with your own value. One, that demonstrates dedication, that demonstrates to an employer that you went above and beyond to actually get to know their culture, and that you've taken the time to reflect as a professional as to why you want to work there and why you want to be a part of that team, because that aligns with your own professional values, right? So that's always a great way. I'm not going to read through the example. I provided examples on the handout, but I'm not going to read it. But I'll give you an example from my own personal life. I'm not a researcher, however. When I was getting ready to apply at Ryerson, at the Career Center, specifically at Ryerson, one of our department's mission is to be, the university as a whole, one of our strategic goals as universities to be innovative, but the Career Center has specifically adopted that mission, and it's always as part of our strategic goals. And it's on the Career Center website. And they even had various, so they have their mission statement talking about taking on innovative programming for students, and they had examples of all the innovative programming they've done in terms of career development. And so being able to be creative with the work I do in career development and to be able to try new things, out of the box things, was very important to me at this point in my career. And so when I started my cover letter, that's what I talked about. I talked about the department's mission to be innovative and why and how that aligned with my own professional values, okay? A second strategy you can use is if the institution has been in the news recently for positive media, not negative media, right? So if they've won awards recently, if they've started a new campaign, right? If a lot of mergers happen, a lot of collaborations happen, sometimes between someone in the community sector and a larger institution in order to develop like a project. So if they've been in the media recently for some positive publicity, that is also another way you can start your cover letter by saying, after I saw this article, or after I watched this commercial and saw that you won this award, this is what, and it's not enough to just mention it. Okay, I saw that you recently won this amazing award, so now I want to work for you, but why? Why is them winning a distinguished award, why is that important to you? Why does that make you now want to work for that organization? Every organization wants to know why them. Every institution wants to know why them. The last strategy you can use to start your cover letter is if you know someone in the organization and they are willing to endorse you, okay? This is very important. You need to have that discussion with the individual first, right? A lot of times I may know a couple of people that work at Ryerson, but if I haven't had that dialogue in the beginning about whether or not they're willing to provide me with an endorsement, then I can't go and put their name on my application, right? So ideally what an endorsement is that if I start my cover letter by saying, X, Y, and Z person referred me, they let me know that this position was open, and so I decided to apply. What might happen, most likely will happen, is at some point, if you make it through that application process, the hiring manager will go to that person and ask about you, which is why it's important to have that dialogue ahead of time to let the person know that you will be using their name on the application, okay? And like I said, it doesn't only, when you start your cover letter, it doesn't only have to be one of these strategies, you can combine them in the open paragraph. Okay, and so for your second section, which is your body paragraphs, what you want to do is you want to pick 2 to 3, like I was saying before, strong examples from your professional experience, right? So examples that you want to go into detail about. So for example, if there was a specific research project that you want to, that you feel has made a huge impact that you want to highlight, that could be example number 1. And then you can go into a lot of detail about that project. So the idea is to use the STAR method. This is a try, test, and retrieve method to help you organize your thoughts, right? So in the situation, you would give the context, right? Where was this happening? What was your position? What was the context? Were you a student? Were you a grad student? Were you volunteering? So forth and so forth. Then at the second part, the task, you would tell what was the duty or task at hand, what was the project at hand, what was the purpose of it, right? And specifically, what was your role? Because a lot of times you work on projects, but they're collaborative in nature, right? So the idea is to describe what the task or the project at hand was and what your specific responsibility was for it. And then in the action, you would go into the steps of what you did, how you did it, methodologies, techniques, and tools you used. And then at the end, you would give a result, right? In terms of, if it's quantifiable, great. Not everything is quantifiable, and that's also fine. For example, it could be that, okay, you finished this research project and then it was used for this, or it was published, or someone else used it for something. Like, it could be, sometimes our work is supportive in nature. So if I was a research assistant, maybe I left and I don't know what the result was, but I know at the end of the day that I was doing this research to support this initiative or to support this person's publication, and that in itself can be a result. So the idea is you want to pick, in the middle of your cover letter, your middle section, your body paragraphs, you want to pick 2 to 3 strong examples from your professional background and write them out according to the STAR method. And then finally at the end, you're gonna conclude your cover letter, right? And so you wanna have a strong and assertive close. So once again, you wanna demonstrate excitement. This is where you can give the review of all the skills that you've mentioned throughout your body paragraphs. And more specifically, how these skills can benefit the organization, right? Because in your intro, you explain why you want to work there. In your body, you're giving your stories. You've picked 2 to 3 examples. You've gone in depth and detail about them. Now when you close, you're gonna highlight the skills and experience that you've mentioned in your body paragraph, and you're gonna explain how these particular skills and experience are going to benefit the organization. And then you're gonna ask for an interview. Okay? And sign off. And if you look at the templates I provided, that's all in there. That's it for the cover letter, and then I'm going to move on to resume. Does anyone have any questions about the cover letter before I move on?
Can I just make a comment?
Yeah.
As an employer, so I've been working over 30 years, and I've participated in hundreds of resume screening processes, and I just have to say I agree with everything you've said, which I'm very happy about to hear like this sort of synergy, because you know the reality is employers for any position may get at least 75 to 100, and that's not a lot. Sometimes you get a lot more in other organizations, and we have to go fast, fast. We don't have time, so the clearer your cover letter is, and the more specific. But you're right, if you're just repeating what's in the resume, or if you have different font sizes, or if it's a mess, like, you won't get another second, and you will put on the note pile. Like, it's unfortunate, but it's that real. So, and you think, okay, come on, I'm such an experienced, wonderful, amazing person, and it's all gonna boil down to this cover letter. Unfortunately, yes. So I would say, you know, as a very strong platform, your presentation is excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, one question.
Yes.
Sometimes we found that there is lots of different items in the
Posting?
Yeah, in the job posting. And when I want to prepare the cover letter, I feel that there are lots of issues that I work and I have experiences and examples in them. So what I want is one of my challenges during writing the cover letter, because there are many things not reflected, specifically the type of experiences and examples, and it's not reflected in the resume. And It's difficult to put everything and examples because I have, for example, at least in the 5 areas of what, from 20 areas that they put in the job posting, I have experience and examples. But prioritizing them, because we don't know what is exactly in their mind, it's very difficult, and streamlining everything in one page or one paragraph in the middle, it's very difficult.
So I completely agree with you, because the more experience you acquire as you progress through your career, the more you will have to articulate to an employer, right? So I think what's important is one thing. So to know that on your resume is where you can capture the majority of your experience very concisely, right? Your cover letter, though, what I will say is pick the examples that you feel are the most impactful and the ones that encompass multiple skills, right? So if I have an example, so if a job posting has 20 responsibilities and then like in the qualification section 7 to 8, and I have an example that can demonstrate that I've used 5 of these qualifications and that I've done 5 of these things, then I'm gonna pick that example, right? Yeah. So pick the examples where you can, it's almost like, if I pick this example, it's like I'm winning the lottery, because it'll show you I've done this, and I've done this, and I've done this, all encompassed in one example, right? And then now the second example you pick, maybe the second example will tackle the rest of the responsibilities. Because the reality is, as you progress through your career, a lot of the projects and tasks and initiatives you're working on, you leverage a lot of skills, right? And so you want to pick the ones that do that. And don't worry that you'll miss something, because you still have the resume.
Sure, a lot of things.
Yeah, right? And so in the resume, you'll capture more. But I agree with you. It is challenging, especially when you've acquired so much experience, to determine what exactly should I choose, right? Sometimes it also helps, and so in my role here at Ryerson, I do a lot of one-to-one advising, and so it helps that if you have access to someone that you could do advising with, sometimes it helps to be able to talk that out with someone, right? Because a lot of times, especially when we're in job search mode and we're writing resume after resume and cover letter after cover letter, sometimes it helps to have an outside perspective to take a look and strategize and brainstorm with you, right?
Thank you.
No problem. Okay, I'm gonna move on to resumes. Is that okay? Okay, awesome. Okay, so first off, I'd like to say that resume writing, in my opinion, is a skill, okay? It's a necessary skill. It's a skill that we all need if we're going to ever apply for a job. So the good news is, it's a skill that everyone can acquire, right? And what's comforting to know, because some people have challenge with the resume writing process, is that that's exactly what it is. It's a process, right? A lot of people expect, okay, I'm just gonna write a resume on the first time, it's gonna be perfect, and I'm gonna be very content with it. I mean, for those of you who do that, great. But sometimes it's not always the case, and that's okay, right? It's okay, because the reality is, like you had mentioned, you're trying to take, sometimes 10, 15, 8 years of experience and condense it into a 2-page document, which can be very challenging, right? So it's understanding that it is a process, and it's okay to go through a couple of drafts and a couple of versions, right? Okay, so once again, I always like to start, what is the purpose? If we don't understand what the purpose is of what we're doing and why we're doing it, then we won't do it effectively, right? So the idea is, for the applicant, how I describe a resume is, it's your marketing document, right? So the idea is, you are marketing yourself to an employer, right? And really trying to encourage an employer to want to call you in for an interview, right? Having said that, because it's a marketing document, what's really important is that it's concise, it gets the point across, it's easy on the eye, it's easy to read, and that it only pertains relevant information, okay? So, sorry, I don't know your name? Seema. Back to what Seema mentioned, the more we progress in our careers, the more experience we acquire, and the more skills we acquire, and then the more things we want to pile on our resume, right? But we always have to ask ourselves, is everything relevant to this job, right? Because you may have a lot of experience, but not all of it may be relevant to the particular job that you're applying for. An employer only wants to know, why are you a good fit for this job? Not all jobs, not all clinical positions, not all research positions, or for whatever type of position you're applying for, but for particularly this job, right? So while you may have a lot of accomplishments, not all of them need to be on the resume, right? Sometimes a fear that individuals have is that if they don't put everything on their resume, then how is anyone gonna know that I did this and I did this and I did this and I did this? So there's a fear to remove things and take things off. But the reality is that because it's if I was trying to sell a product right now, if I was trying to sell a chair and I created a poster for it, I'm not gonna tell you why you should buy this chair and this table, right? I'm only gonna have points on why this chair, right? And I'm only gonna have evidence and comments and proof points as to why this chair is a good fit for you, right? So you need to think of your resume like that. So what I usually advise people is have a master resume with all your experience, all your education, all projects you've done, awards, development, so forth, certifications. And then when you're getting ready to prepare your resume for specific positions, then you pull from that master resume, okay?
As our friend said.
She was.
No, it's
We're
true,
insane.
and it's terrible, but
Yeah.
it's true.
And I was a recruiter too for 3.5 years when I started my career. Sometimes I'd put out a job and I'd get over 100 applicants.
Yeah.
If I went through every single application thoroughly, I would never go home. Yes.
Just, maybe everybody understands this, but that's for the first sort.
Yes,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna talk about that.
Yeah,
I'm
okay,
gonna talk
just,
about-
yeah.
Thank
It
you
doesn't
for
mean they
pointing that
never
out.
read your resume
No,
for
and
more
I'm
than
gonna,
6 seconds.
I'm gonna talk about the process.
Okay.
So, the initial sort, and sometimes, so let's take a backtrack. Does everyone, so some organizations use an applicant tracking system and some don't. Does everyone know what an applicant tracking system is? Okay, so basically it's a recruitment tool to help where it's a digital recruitment tool. So a lot of times when you submit your resume and you upload it and you submit it through an online platform, that means that the organization is using some sort of database to help them sift through resumes. So usually what will happen is for particular jobs, there will be an algorithm created with specific keywords and skills that for a particular job. And so what will happen is as applicants come through for that particular job, when certain keywords and skills come up, that application will be flagged, right? And then the ones that are flagged are the ones that a recruiter in the first round might spend 6 minutes screening. Seconds, yes. But not every organization uses an applicant tracking system because they're very expensive, right? So sometimes you're literally just sending resumes to an email of usually an HR manager or a recruiter, and they have to do that work of the system, right? So in the first scan, it's 6 seconds. And by the way, because I get asked this a lot, just because you make it through the applicant tracking system doesn't mean you're gonna get a call, right? And that's why because some people say, okay, I'm just gonna put all the keywords on there, and then I'm gonna get through the system, and then I'm gonna call for an interview. That's not how it works, right? So the initial scan is 6 seconds, right? And that's perhaps just reviewing presentation, formatting, key qualifications. And then a second pile is formed of people that, okay, now we're gonna take a more thorough look at their applications. In that second review is when your cover letters and resumes will be read very thoroughly, right? And this is when I'm gonna get into why it's important to have certain things on your resume, right? When that second review is happening, that is when a third pile will be formed of, okay, these are the individuals we're gonna call in for an interview, okay?
Excuse me.
Yes,
What can you do in 6 seconds?
in 6 seconds?
I can tell you.
Yeah.
So again, it goes back to key qualifications. Let's say, and you know, it's interesting because you say you see a job posting that's got 20 things on it. Just like there's badly written resumes, there's badly written job postings, right? Because you're not looking for 20 things in that first sort. Like I'm looking for minimum educational requirements and keywords in terms of job headings, like titles. And then I'm looking for overall look. Like if it looks like a mess, and that happens sometimes, and you maybe are gonna get to it, like when you send stuff, if you don't PDF it, it sometimes can look like a mess when it goes through, you know. So it's very fast. It's you take a look at the whole organization, the whole document top to bottom, and you get very experienced. Like the first times I did it, but you get experience, so you take a look at the whole document top to bottom, and you just pick out those